Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast. The Middle East is on fire once again. Over the past 24 hours, both Hamas and the Houthis fired on Tel Aviv as Israeli ground forces re-entered Gaza. Folks, we need to break down the state of play from the world's most chaotic and strategic region and why it matters to you. Let's start with Gaza. Earlier today, Hamas terrorists fired 3 long-range rockets at Tel Aviv. Now, thankfully, one was intercepted and the other 2 fell in open areas, but it's clear that the war in Gaza is back on and that the ceasefire is over, thanks to Hamas's refusal to release any more Israeli hostages. Israel has spent the past few days carrying out massive airstrikes in Gaza and eliminating top Hamas officials. Meanwhile, Israeli ground troops are conducting an operation in northern Gaza. Here's Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu with more.
Hamas is responsible for this war. It invaded our towns, murdered our people, raped our women, and kidnapped our loved ones. Hamas refused offer after offer to release our hostages. In the past 2 weeks, Israel did not initiate any military action in the hope that Hamas would change course. Well, that didn't happen. While Israel accepted the offer of President Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, Hamas flatly refused to do so. And this is why I authorized yesterday the renewal of military action against Hamas. To those who criticize Israel, I ask, what would you do if terrorists murdered and kidnapped your children? You would do what we are doing. In the face of pure evil, free societies have no choice but to fight.
The end game here for Israel is clear. Bring back the 24 living hostages and decisively crush Hamas. By the time this war is over, Hamas must be completely neutralized, much like the Nazis after World War II. And then we'll see if President Trump's plan for Gaza can take shape, including the relocation of Gaza's thoroughly radicalized residents to other Muslim countries. Speaking of President Trump, he's ordered U.S. forces to unleash airstrikes on Yemen's Houthis throughout this week. Now, like Hamas, the Houthis are an Iranian proxy, and they have wreaked havoc on global shipping in the Red Sea for well over a year. The president says those days are now over, yet the Houthis don't seem to be getting the memo quite yet. They continue to threaten new attacks, and overnight, they launched a ballistic missile at Tel Aviv. Folks, also much like Hamas, I believe the Houthis are signing their own death warrant with these actions. Both terror groups are lashing out in advance of their eventual demise, which brings us to the head of the snake, Iran. Never has the Iranian regime been as vulnerable as it is right now. Its ring of fire is in the process of being smashed. Its air defenses were destroyed by Israel back in October, and now its nuclear weapon sites are exposed. I've said that this will be the year of reckoning for Iran's nuclear program if this last chance at diplomacy that President Trump is offering is not accepted by Iran's ayatollahs. If they refuse to abandon their nuclear ambitions, then Israel, quite possibly with help from the United States, will strike Iran's nuclear program. President Trump recently sent a letter to Iran's supreme leader giving him 2 months to agree to a nuclear deal or else. Folks, the chess pieces are moving on the board, and one last thing to keep an eye on is Turkey. Massive protests broke out last night throughout Turkey after radical President Recep Erdogan jailed one of his political opponents, the mayor of Istanbul. Remember, Turkey is a NATO member nation, so events there could have major shockwaves across the world. We like to say here that what happens in the Middle East does not stay in the Middle East. That's why we are very happy to be joined by our good friend, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, Senior Advisor to President Trump and Director of Counterterrorism for the National Security Council. He is based in the White House. He sat down with me for an exclusive interview this week. We covered Hamas, the Houthis, the southern border, and much more. Here's my exclusive interview with Dr. Sebastian Gorka. It is great to see you, my friend. And again, President Trump sending a long overdue message to the Iranian axis. How deeply significant are these strikes in Yemen in particular? It's much more than just taking out Houthi terrorists. It's about opening global shipping lanes. It really goes along with an America First agenda, right?
Absolutely. It's about the U.S. economy, and it's about one of the staples of world economy, which is free navigation over the waterways that every nation should be allowed to access. The mere fact that more than 140 times the Houthis have attacked U.S. vessels in the Straits in the last year and a half, that a U.S. vessel has not been able to cross that waterway without being fired upon for more than a year is a function of Joe Biden, his removal of the Houthis from the foreign terrorist organization designation list. And the president on Thursday morning said, this has to end. We are interested in global trade for all nations, and freedom of navigation is non-negotiable. And the idea that this Iranian-backed group of terrorists is basically holding world trade hostage and is impacting the U.S. economy because of their attacks on civilian as well as military vessels. Well, that ended on Saturday when our military dropped the hammer on this terrorist organization.
Yeah, I said that Iran is on notice. Is this part, Dr. Gorka, of the maximum pressure campaign? I mean, economic sanctions obviously will squeeze Iran's ayatollahs, but it seems everywhere Iran turns, now that President Trump is back in office, they're feeling the heat. Their proxy network, their economy, their nuclear program. Is this part of that maximum pressure overall campaign?
Utterly. And all you need to do, Eric, is to read the president's Truth Social post from Saturday afternoon after the strikes were launched. It really is an explication of what had happened under the Biden administration that fueled Iran, literally released tens of billions of dollars to that bloodthirsty regime that sees America as quote unquote the great Satan and as Israel as the little Satan. Now, well, that ends. The last sentence of the president's post is a declaration, a very, very simple, clear, concise message to the Islamo-fascist regime in Tehran that you must stop aiding and abetting all proxies, all jihadists, not just the Houthis in Yemen, but all of those who are simply front men for the regime. Otherwise, there will be dire consequences to pay for that regime. Not the people, because the people of Persia have been under this dictatorship since 1979. But this was a message, Eric, not just for the Houthis, but for the fascist mullahs in Tehran.
Director Gorka, great point. The Iranian people are the main victims of this evil regime. Speaking of terror in the region, I guess we have two sides of the jihadi coin. We have the Iranian axis, of course. Then we have the likes of ISIS. And last Friday night, a very significant takeout for the United States, a top ISIS leader in Iraq, Abu Khadija. You are, of course, President Trump's senior director for counterterrorism. Could you break down the significance of the elimination of this ISIS leader late last week?
Well, it has to be put into the broader context of what the president has allowed our war fighters and the intelligence community to do for the last 54 days, which is to simply unleash this exquisite capability that is the national security enterprise of the United States government. For 4 years, we basically weren't allowed to do our job. I can tell you that as I traveled across the intelligence community, parts of the defense community in my first weeks in the administration, I was told that we know where the bad guys are, but the Biden administration simply did not want to kill them. Well, with the first operation in Somalia, in week 2 of the administration, where we dropped, the hounds of hell on that ISIS cave complex in northern Somalia, we sent a message to all jihadists, be they Shia or be they Sunni. And what happened just before the strike against the Houthis is that our brave warfighters took out the #1 ISIS terrorist in Iraq, a man who laughably called himself the governor of Iraq. Well, that man is dead. So the #1 person in Iraq was taken out by our warfighters, and that's part of the pattern. As the president said in his first viral tweet, in the second week of the Trump administration after our strike on Somalia, he said, if you threaten American citizens, and he put it in capitals, and we put it on the lanyards for our IDs here in my directorate in the National Security Council, we will find you and we will kill you. That's the message from President Trump. If you are a jihadi and you want to harm Americans, we will find you and we will kill.
Director Gorka, it is peace through strength in real time. And by the way, promises made, promises kept. Once again, President Trump crushed the ISIS caliphate during his first term, and he's doing everything he can to make sure it does not rear its evil head once again in his second term. Hey, bringing it a bit closer to home, Tren de Aragua, the Venezuelan terror group, more than just a violent criminal gang. This is a designated terror group now under President Trump. We see the deportations in the past few days. Can we expect the operations against the likes of Tren de Aragua, MS-13, the cartels who entered this country in many cases illegally on Joe Biden's watch? Can we expect those operations to increase and more deportations in the days to come?
Well, just listen to that hero as President Trump. Even Elon Musk said this to me recently, straight out of Central Casting, Tom Homan. If there's anyone who's going to get the job done, it's Tom Homan. Under the incredible leadership of Governor Noem, Stephen Miller is the Homeland Security Advisor. We now have Kash Patel as the director of the FBI. His new deputy just sworn in on Monday is, of course, the incredible Dan Bongino. There is no better team. It's not a sci-fi movie. This isn't the Justice League. This is reality. If there is a team who are going to get the rapists, the murderers, the trialed traffickers, the drug dealers out of America, it's the people who I just listed for you, starting with Pam Bondi on down. So yes, as long as it takes, it will be done, because there is no negotiating with these people. They need to be gotten rid of, gotten out of the country, or put in prison.
Yeah, it's an all-star team that is making America safe again. You are an integral part of that, Director Gorka. Last question, about a minute left. These auto pen pardons we're hearing a bunch about. You've been commenting on it on X and across social media. How problematic is that Joe Biden, if it was Joe Biden, we don't know, or his auto pen, issued pardons of the likes of Hunter Biden, Anthony Fauci in the waning days of his administration?
Well, look, just look at the president's tweet and his Truth Social post, I think it was Monday night, of, the presidential portraits of him in 2017 and him today, that incredible new portrait in the middle, who was the president between the two Trump administrations, and it's a photograph of the auto pen. Eric, I'm no attorney, but I think it's common sense. The auto pen, which is a machine, is used to sign what? Greetings, letters to kids who've written to the president from high school. You're not putting an auto pen signature on a document of as massive legal import as a presidential pardon. So I'll leave it to the attorneys. I'll leave it to the courts to decide. But to quote the good bard, there is something amiss in the state of Denmark, if you know what I mean.
Well, you know what? It is a new day, and you are part of that. Director Sebastian Gorka joining us from the White House. Always great to see you, my friend. Keep up the great work, Sebastian. God bless. We will see you again soon.